Welcome, everyone. This is Dwayne Sr with Tony Tresalt on another Tree Actions podcast, the Human Forestry Podcast. And today, joining us is none other than Mr. Chris McGuire, and we're happy to have him on the show. Well, Chris, welcome to Tree Actions.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome,
Appreciate
Chris.
the
Thanks for
invite.
coming on.
So, as I mentioned, sorry, Tony, I didn't get that. It was
Oh, no worries.
okay. Well, just for our listeners know that my internet connection is a little weak, and so there may be the odd little delay or hesitation, and that's what's happening. Please bear with us. It's all good. Well, Chris, we usually ask everybody a question about, how it was that they got started in trees, like where it all began. For some people, it started as a child because of the family. For some people, it was someone they knew. But, if you know, even before you did it for a living, how did your journey in the trees begin?
Yeah, well, I was just a kid. This would be 1977 to 80. Mom and dad bought a farm west of Edmonton, Alberta, here in Canada. And a couple of years after we bought it, we planted 6,000 trees. The idea being that we were going to turn 40 acres of it into a tree farm. So we planted blue spruce, laurel leaf willow, northwest poplar, jack pine, just a whole bunch of different species that we knew would grow well, and we got at it. And it was just brutal. Uh, it was just brutal work. Like because we had a big family, we had 6 kids, and so you got 6 kids as labor, and and you don't. It's not an easy job. It's not a well-equipped job. It's not a well-led job. But it's a job, and boy, we got them all in. And right after we did that, Dad was after all of us. Somebody has to become an arborist. Someone has to take care of all these trees. And we weren't paying attention because the idea was the trees were there to sell, not to um, there was going to be no sculpting necessary. There was going to be none of that. So none of us paid any attention to it. And then there was a big organization came in and bought every tree, all 6,000 of them. And they only ended up moving out 30. And so and then they went broke. And, I don't know, they went toes up. And we were left with all these trees. So now Dad says, okay, now we got to take care of them because they're here and they're going to be here forever. And that's where I started my arboriculture or being an arborist. And nobody knew in my family what to do or how to do it. And of course, there was no internet back then. And here I am now. I'm 13 years old, and I just went after it with secateurs and loppers to begin with, and over time chainsaw. So that's how that started for me. And I was probably the best lion's tailor you'd ever meet in the world to begin with. But I learned on my own. So that's where the journey started.
Wow. So you were cutting trees on the family farm, basically.
Yeah. And then there was all that. We had multiple quarter sections that we farmed. So all of as soon as you pick up the chainsaw, it's you're the chainsaw guy. So all the trees that need to be cleared off crop lines and fence lines and all that kind of stuff, that became all my job. So I went after it and I loved it. Never intended to do it for a living though.
Well, and so what, you do that for a living now. So how did that transition make it? And, where did y'all go? Like you wouldn't have, I mean, obviously it started your career, but would you have called yourself an arborist then? Obviously you learned things that probably applied, but where did the arborist journey begin, would you say? Tell us that story.
after I talked to you, after I asked you whether I was an arborist or not, because I wasn't ISA certified. And the answer you gave, and this was 2012 when I talked to you, when you came to work to give
Yeah.
us our course. And I asked you, I said, am I an arborist technically? And you said to me, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but you said if you are working with trees and you care for trees and you care for them in the environment and you're doing your best to ensure that they live a healthy life and the surrounding ecology is improved because of them, then you're an arborist. And I like that answer. So from that point on, I was an arborist. And then I went and got the ISA
Wow.
and all the other stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So I suppose I was when I was a kid. You know what I was because I really cared for those trees. I mean, they were beautiful and they were well planted in a beautiful location and they were good stock. So I worked hard on them. Those are good days.
Excellent. Um, you mentioned your father. He had somewhat of a pivotal role in your journey, did he not? Did he not? I guess I have to be fair. I know a bit of your story, so
Yeah.
and I know it's personal, but it is quite powerful. Your final decision to join the arborist workforce had something to do with your dad, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did. I wasn't. I didn't want to be an arborist at all. The fact of it is because I was good. I've always been pretty good on a chainsaw, and every job I ever had, except once as a waiter, revolved around the chainsaw, and I was on it all the time, every job, and I liked it. It was just something that I was good at. Um, but my dad recognized it, and but I had no intention of being an arborist. And my dad saw it, and he recognized it, and he was always after me since I was a kid. You need your ticket, even though there isn't a ticket in Canada. You need to be an arborist. And I always just, it kind of made me angry because I had so many other things I wanted to do. I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to do 100 things. I didn't want to be an arborist. I had no intention. And then one day, the story that in particular that you're talking about, we had been out. Vehicle of mine broke down out in the countryside, and we'd been fixing it for a couple of days. It was a rather tough job, and we were having breakfast the one morning before we went out to work on it, and we were sitting there, and he was telling me again about because I was between jobs, and he was saying, Chris, you got to be an arborist." And I looked at him. I remember looking at him across the table, and I said, "Dad, that's not going to happen." I was working at a small company that was doing oil field service at the time, and I was doing just fine. And I said, it's not going to happen." And he said, and he reached across the table and he held my hand. And he said, that's my dream for you. Oh, okay. Well, that's he was being very odd at that breakfast, but afterwards, a couple hours later, he died while we were working on that van of mine. He had a massive heart attack and died on the spot. So there was a lot of trauma involved with that and all that. But once the kind of the dust cleared on that, and a few months down the road, when I could gather my thoughts together, I thought, well, I'll try because it wasn't doing anything for the winter. I was just sitting around, so I thought I'll try it. What the hell? And I'll go and get some formal training. So I ended up on Davy Tree's doorstep in Edmonton, and they took me on and right like the first minute of the first day when we were standing in the equipment bay and we were all stretching, one of the guys says, we were busting up into teams, and one of the guys says, "I'll take the old guy," meaning me. And we went out, and an hour and a half later, I was in a tree, tied in, and he was showing me what to do. It was just that quick. And
Wow.
he was such a good dude. Kid by the name of Justin Kovaluk. He was such a good guy, and I appreciated him so much that I just took to it and learned exponentially. It's just where I needed to be and what I needed to do, and it's gone from there.
Wow.
So thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's a poignant story, and I'm glad that you shared it because I don't know how many people have had that type of a prompt and experience, and then followed it or listened, and then had it work out. Because how long ago was that now?
Well, that was 2008. Yeah, it was just the oddest event, eh? And obviously he's going to catch your attention, and I just did something about it. I felt like it was time. If he wanted it, then I was going to try it out.
So, tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, you worked at David Tree. How long were you there?
I was only there for a couple of years. I was only there for a couple of years. They ended up taking me off the tree crew and putting me on the tree spraying crew because I had my pesticide applicator license, and that's not where I wanted to be. And then a great job came up with my local municipality, so I just jumped over. A
Right,
job in forestry to lead up their forestry department.
right.
Yeah.
So, what would you say would have been your biggest contribution to yourself and to your career, your learning from your time with Davy Tree?
With Davy Tree, it was the different ways that those guys had of getting a job done. That you could look at things, especially when you were in a larger group with them. They like to discuss their options, how we can go about it, and it went everywhere from absurd right to as technical as you could possibly get. So it was a great introduction into it because I learned how to look at tree work in multiple different um, phases, basically, and how to do everything from letter buck to hold on, boys. Let's really look at this tree and get it down safely. So I really appreciated that education because it certainly taught me what I don't want to do and started me on the process of what I didn't know was a 6-step felling plan, which has certainly helped me out in the future.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right,
not particularly the 6-step, but the way of evaluating danger and consequence so that I could do the job safely.
right. So, what would be one of your most memorable tree experiences that you could regale us with? That I mean, we all obviously have a few, but there's I could think of two that kind of stick out in my mind that were like, usually they involve pain or near death. Often, at least mine do, but we want to expand on that too. But what which ones stand out in your mind? What's the first one that kind of pops in?
Well, technically, I've never been much of a climber. I don't have the knees for it, so more bucket work than anything. But the I think any tree that has been technically difficult to remove, and then the planning phase of getting a bucket through it, or needing to bucket and climb it, or those sorts of things. Those ones that present that challenge have always been very very rewarding for me. And I had one time a fairly um, well-known arborist around Edmonton showed up at one of our sites, and he said, "It's like you dismantled that thing and put it right back into the box," which I always appreciated. So, just
Cool.
that kind of thing. I really like. But it's the action of it. It's the cuts. Where do you make the cuts? How do you make that snap cut and remove that safely and with the ground crew safe below you and your drop zone established and that. So it's not maybe any particular trees. There's been trouble trees that have caused me great grief, but for the most part, it's the entire process of it which really pleases me.
So, how much climbing did you do? You talked a little bit about climbing. I realized you didn't do as much, but what did you have your own equipment, or
Yeah,
what did you climb with? Like, what do you remember? What knot you use and hitches and stuff? Or
Matt, the only thing that I used to climb those 2 years for Davy, and I wasn't taught well, to climb. Uh, I was then it was the oddest thing. You'd free climb the tree to get a rope in,
Yeah.
and because nobody was using throw line um,
Right.
to establish the rope. So it was just that, and I had a harness that a guy gave me. I can't even remember the name of it. It's hanging on the wall of the garage. Um, yeah, it was all Bolins and it was pretty greasy, man. I'm not real proud of it.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. That's okay. So you still have the old harness somewhere, like you could dig
Yeah,
it out.
yeah, I sure can. It's still sitting there. Yeah, yeah.
And do you remember the rope you were using?
If I it was half inch.
Yeah.
The hell was it? That orange steel core or not steel core? Uh, no, I can't off the top of my head.
If it was orange, it was probably New England Safety Blue with the orange and what orange and white.
Orange and yeah, it was orange and white. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it would have been New
yeah,
England Safety Blue High Vis is what it would have been, which makes sense. Which
yeah.
makes
And we
sense.
used it. We used it for climbing, pulling trees, pulling vehicles out of the mud. We use those ropes for everything. It's just a terrible way to learn. It really was.
Did you use spurs too?
Yeah, I spurred quite a bit. We had a lineman out of where was he from? Out of Illinois, and he taught me how to spur and did a fair amount of spurring, and I liked spurring. Um, I think that's one of the reasons why I did like doing the power line teaching so much is because I got a thing for spurring that I really appreciate.
So you did quite a few removals with spurs then.
Yeah, I did, and the gaffs I had were old, just old lineman gaffs.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and they're still around too. Still got them kicking around.
Well,
Yeah,
we haven't had a lot of guys on yet or ladies on the show that have a bucket background. Well, I mean, a lot of guys, use the bucket, but I mean,
yeah.
you've been talking about you quickly moved into aerial lift and using the bucket. You know, there isn't a bucket international bucket arborist bucket championships, and there's this, but there's no question that it involves some skill, and that's one. In fact, I think one of the first courses we did with you was it aerial lift operation or was it a chainsaw course? I think we did first and
No,
then aerial lift.
aerial lift was first. You did a whole week of that, and then we
Okay,
did another week of chainsaw.
interesting. So
Yeah,
there's no doubt that many people that'll listen to this run buckets, and I'm
yeah.
glad that we have. I think it's something worth talking about. Like how do you if you were to do a bucket competition, if you were to set something up, what would be the kind of thing that a bucket operator would want to be excel at? If someone's listening to this and they're new in a bucket or they even are running a bucket for a long time, like if you're trying to explain to someone how to run a bucket or things about it, first of all, does it matter which kind? Are they all different? And then what could you share with someone about running a bucket based on your experiences?
I would. I'm big on using the bucket as a mobile platform. So I'm also, and that means that I'm big on moving the bucket to the cut rather than assuming I can make the cut from the bucket. So what that'll mean is I get the bucket to the most comfortable position I can, and then I make a cut instead of reaching out or using a pole saw or something like that. I see a lot of guys bucketing. They'll get up into the tree and then they'll make multiple cuts from that position. Um, and I am of the belief that every cut needs to be under control. So none of this just cut and let her drop and cut and let her drop. And I see a lot of that. And so I try not to, and I teach my guys that if you're working from a mobile platform, then that platform should be moving throughout the tree so that you're making the best cuts possible. And I think that really helps with one handing as well. So I think a lot of uh, I think a lot of one handing is advantageous where you can lean way out and cut that thing and it goes down. But if you've got to manipulate the bucket to the spot, the chances are that you're going to make a two handed cut under control most of the time. And I like that. I like being in control of what I do, and I think that the bucket lends perfectly to that. And then if you have to get out of it and reposition the truck so that you're on the other side of the tree, or you can make you've got better access over there, then that's what you do. I think the entire thing is a tool, and it is to be used as efficiently as your chainsaw.
So you're talking about one-handed, the dreaded one-handed talk debate, which, there's those that would say, what are you talking about? That's just the way work's done. And then there's those maybe going, what? You don't,
Yeah.
you mean to get in a position so you can one hand, or you actually saying you don't? And then they're saying, oh, one of those guys that doesn't one hand. Um, uh, Wherever people sit on that debate, I don't want to debate the debate, but
No.
like, give us your, the one handing according to Chris, as far as where you stand on it. Let's lay it on us.
Lay it on you. I don't think that
Yeah.
there's any reason to, and I'll get flamed for it, but I don't think that there's any reason to make even one-handed cut. And that
Uh,
is and that is when you're standing on the ground and you look at that tree. Your job on the ground is to assess how you're going to move through it, whether you're a climber or a bucket operator, how you're going to move through that tree and do that job effectively, efficiently, and safely. So, and then once you get up there, that plan changes because the plan is it's a living plan, right? And it changes as you as you work it. But
right.
I think that um, I think that as human beings, we're instinctively not instinctively, but we like to trend to the lazy side of things, the easier side of things, and that difficult cut or that difficult effort, if we can do it quicker and seemingly easier, we'll always go for that. So I don't like to default to the one-handed cut, and I'll never tell a guy he can't do it because I've got arborists working for me right now that do it, and they've explained why. And you have to understand that there's different paths. The thing about it is that I think it should be part of your work plan to reduce that as much as possible. And I think that there's good steps in place to do that. Um, the problem is that once your default cut becomes the one-handed cut, and you say I only do it once in a while, you'll do it all the time because it's just the easiest way to do it, or you assume it is, and that's where I stand on that. Not a big
Right.
fan.
Yeah. And that's, I think a lot of people feel that way. Like it's faster and easier, you especially, the utility realm where it's over the wires and you cut small, hold it, chuck it free and clear so it doesn't drop down on the wires. So, it may seem rudimentary and basic, but, you got people wondering, well, how do you cut a branch and not have it fall and stay in control of it? How do you explain that to someone, the technique you use?
Well, that's when you're cutting outside of your compression and tension, and you're cutting in that neutral zone that is adjacent to those. So you have to establish where that is. You have to establish compression and tension, and then you're making a snap cut in the neutral zone adjacent to that, so that you can put the saw away, take that cut, and then take it out of the tree and place it on the ground where you want it to go.
Right.
And I also like the action because when I take a piece out of the tree, it forces me to look down. So it's not just I just don't take it and chuck it. It forces me to look down on the ground, and you'll get the odd groundsman that'll pop in while he thinks that you're on the saw and to clear. And it's always a good idea also to keep an eye on your drop zone and your people, right? And
For sure.
if they're watching and you're able, I mean, maybe you can put that piece right at the back of the chipper, which helps everybody.
Right.
There's lots of benefit to it.
Well, speaking of bringing the piece over to the chipper and stuff, I have seen, I've never done it myself and I've seen it done and I don't know if it's prevalent or not because I'm sure that if it does get done, a lot of people don't talk about it, but I don't know if you ever have seen or what you'd have to say about people that will almost use it as a, almost like a crane. The bigger pieces, they're pretty heavy, kind of flop them onto the bucket lip. Like I've seen like 4 foot chunks of trunk that are too big to really carry. They're 100 plus pounds.
Yeah,
They're not 500, 600 pounds, but they're decent size. Crack them onto the, like, mismatch, cut them, snap them, and kind of tilt them onto the bucket, lay them on there, and then move that over so they don't have to be wheelbarrowed or lifted or cut out of the backyard. You ever seen
yeah.
that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, I sure have, and that's just because not every tree crew is going to go out with a bobcat, right, or a skid steer that does grapple and can grab that stuff. Those ones I tend to I'll cut them and then I'll drop them and then I'll let them fall, snap them out, let them fall on the ground, and then I'll address them when they're on the ground, cut them up into something smaller. But generally, I don't cut anything I can't lift. And as
Right.
far as put it on the bucket, you know, I'll get, I don't know. I mean, I don't work in a production environment. I work in a process environment, right? So I don't have to get 6 trees out in a day, or else somebody's going to be shaking their finger at me. So I can do it a little more safely. However, I do not think that you should ever load the bucket or ever load that system with anything else other than yourself, because it's lifting you every day for hours and hours and hours. And you already do enough to it by torquing it through the tree, trying to find a path through, and all of the sap and the resin and the gasoline and all that crap that gets all over the boom and the bucket and the whole thing. I just overloading it, and it's got a very um, upfront and clearly stated weight allowance to it. And then you put a 200 pound, 6 foot dude in it like me, and it's bouncing and stuff like that. So there's all that shock. So no, I don't like to load the bucket with anything else other than my fat self.
You bring up a good point, as far as, guys are, well, I'm not a little, I think there's a little more attention paid. And I think we do overlook this a lot in the arborist industry, especially with our fall protection or the stuff that gets us up there and keeps us up there. You get complacent with using it every day and you don't, but, certainly I think a climbing rope and a belt gets checked just by virtue of using it and putting it on. Whereas something like your boom, like, how did you, or how often would you yourself check your boom, and then what did you look for? Like, what were things, or things that you even have seen that you got to watch for? Like, what would you tell someone to be like that's important to check, and as far as your inspection and what you're checking for on your bucket truck, your area lift?
Remember when we did the boom course at work, and you had us put the bucket down on the pylon, on the
Yeah,
work pylon,
yeah,
and you put glasses of water on the step and on the side of the on the lip of the boom, and then
yeah,
we had to move it through an obstacle course, and then set
yeah.
it down on a work pylon. And I thought that was a fantastic way of learning your boom. And the point I'm trying to make about that is when you sat it down on that pylon, that rubber pylon, you can feel that resistance. And I
Yeah.
think it's important that you hold on.
Yeah.
I gotta pause that. So, and I feel it's important that you know what the limitations of your equipment are, because if you're not paying attention, then you're, like I was referencing a minute ago, going through a tree and torquing that boom against the trunk or a limb trying to reach something, and you need to be cognizant of the feel of that equipment as you use it. So I think that's very important. I think that it's critical that you're not dropping limbs or rounds on the boom itself as they fall to the ground. I think it's light stuff. I think that's pretty fair to move out with the boom. It's just, but it's the tool that needs to. I mean, geez, you're 70 feet off the ground, and you're abusing
Yeah.
the thing that's holding you there. That's problematic to me.
But what about just in like pre-work, like inspection it, like on a daily, weekly, or whatever basis? What are things that you look for that, just as far as wear points, or just your inspection process? Like, do you have things that are very routine to you, or something? I'm just curious.
One of the I'm looking at wear points all the time. I'm looking for leaks. I'm always looking in the clear inspection panels. I'll actually remove those the odd time and take a look inside there to make sure that everything is tickety boo. I've actually had a very hard time finding out how much that boom is supposed to be greased, or the turret is supposed to be
Right.
greased. I've had some people say almost never, to other people saying you're supposed to grease it to. I've got what four grease zerks on that on the turret, and I've had people say don't touch them. That's what maintenance is for. So that's an
Hmm.
odd thing. So I'm watching out for that, trying to get answers for that. But a lot of it
Right.
is wear and then chips in the fiberglass. A chip on that fiberglass is very tough. So if there's chips on it, there's something fairly substantial that's happened. So I'm always about investigating that and how that happened, and then looking for the cracks that will come from fiberglass from that. So yeah, it's a journey. But even though I'm not on the truck so much anymore, I still pass it all the time. And I'm looking at it and I'm telling the guys, I'm pointing stuff out to the guys. And I don't know. I hope they're being patient with me. They sure act like it.
It's an interesting comment you make. So, like, if you notice, you know, something out of the ordinary, you mentioned a chip, like, what other things like that? If you've seen it on a boom or a bucket, like, I'm thinking, like, well, I don't know what would be things that I don't know if we'd call them red flags per se, but maybe we could. That you go, that's strange. That needs to be investigated, and either find out if it's how bad it is, or even what happened. How important is that? Like, where did that nick in the boom that wasn't there last time I looked at it come from?
Yeah, that that hydraulic leak, those always scare me. I don't know, that's always something that's got to go straight to the mechanics. But as far as like for the rest of it, the movement of the boom itself, because I'm so used to it, the minute it makes there's a little hiccup in it, uh,
Yeah,
that raises the red flag right there. And that more than anything, if it comes off the cradle and it jumps, hesitates, and then goes back into its movement, that stuff really gets my juices flowing big time, because it works the same. I mean, it's a good boom. That's a good system. That's a VersaLift system on that big forestry truck of ours, and it works like a dream. And it's just an absolute dream. And so any hiccup is is instantly problematic to me, because I have no idea where it came from. And that's one of the problems with different people using it. You don't know how they're going to operate it.
interesting, interesting.
So it absolutely has to be inspected.
Well, that's cool. So, any advice you have just about? Well, we'll jump off this aerial lift theme here in a second, but like, what does Chris look at when you mentioned a couple times now about planning and talking about it, looking at the tree, whether you're climbing or bucket operating. But as a bucket operator, you're getting ready to do pruning, removal, whatever. What are you thinking about in your setup? Like, when does it start? When you look at the work order, when you pull up to the tree, and how do you position that as far as getting your boom in and through that tree?
It starts with the work order, where you're going to go, and my very first thought is the guys that are going to go with me, and who's with me, how much they know, and uh, where I can use them on the job site, and who I can sort of who's going to need who can get some beneficial training out of what I'm doing. So I got my train guys, and then I got guys that don't really know what they're doing but are keen, and they're key to the process, because you can teach them a lot of things. So first of all, I do an assessment of the crew that I'm going in with before I even step in the truck. We'll have a real
Hmm.
quick tailgate. This is the job that we're
Yeah,
going to do, and these are the things that I know that each guy is good at doing. So
right.
then we'll go there. We park the truck at a distance, and I'll walk in and I'll take a look at what the task is. And it doesn't take very long. If there's another arborist with me, we'll do a tree assessment, and we'll go from the tree assessment to a vehicle assessment, where if we've got to do multiple sets to get at it, where the chipper is going to go, where the drop zone is going to go, and then we'll set up. and then everybody gets another tailgate. This is the what's going to happen. This is the drop zone. You'll watch me for communication, and I'm in charge. And I, Chris McGuire in the bucket, am in charge of everything. So, and I mean that not to be vain, but if I don't know what's going on in the drop zone or with the guys, then everything is out of control.
And
So
that's the same with
all
anybody in a bucket. You're like a guy in the truck up in the air with, in control of what goes down, really is in control
the guy in the
or in
chainsaw
charge.
is always the guy that's in charge
Right.
on my site. So anyway, so what happens in the ground on the ground works around my schedule. So I'll finish up. So once I get up in the tree, everybody knows their job. And once I get up in the tree and the job starts, then I'll cut and then I'll stop. And the crew will work to clean it all up, and then I'll cut. And while I'm cutting, they're at the back of the chipper doing the cleanup. So they're raking and they're out of the drop zone and they're doing that. But everybody's got a job and everybody's in place. And if you don't have a job, then you are where I can see you and you're watching me.
Well, that makes sense. It's good stuff. And I was thinking also about you yourself, you know, positioning the bucket to work the tree, like actually putting it up there. What are considerations you have? Like as far as where you want it to be, like let's say someone set it up for you and you walked up and you're like, oh, that's why would you put it there? I wouldn't have put it there. What are
Yeah.
you looking for when you set up your truck to go work that tree?
I'm looking to put it on the opposite side from where I'm working. And if I can boom through the tree, then that's what I'll do. And
Huh.
I start from the bottom and work to the top. So if I have clear access and I don't want to be close to the truck, and I'll I'll take the truck and I'll kind of bend it at an angle so that the chipper is relatively close to the drop zone, so the guys aren't dragging too far. And then I'll boom through the tree to do the work on the other side of the tree. As long as I can reach it effectively, then I'm pretty happy. And then instead of
Huh.
I'm not a big fan of reaching out straight stick out on the out at a I don't know at a 45 or something like that. So I'll move the truck if I need to. I don't like that sway and that shock on the boom. On the
You
outriggers,
mean going out
I don't
really
like
far
pulling that other
horizontal? You
outrigger
mean?
off the ground.
Right. So yeah, let's just does that happen? Like is that like if outriggers are bouncing or coming off? What does something happen? Is that
Yeah.
something to worry about?
Oh yeah. Yeah. For me, that's a big red flag. The and I don't think that can like some guys. I've had guys. I've got a guy that works for me right now who just puts another outrigger pad under there, but it's the weight distribution that bothers me. And so I'll just move the truck. I'll just come down, reset, and it's a good time to sharpen saws, and the guys can have a smoke, and you shut the chipper down for a few minutes and get a drink and have a snack and have a chat. And then the
Yeah.
guys have got some questions, and they'll fire some questions back and forth, and you can harass each other and all that stuff. And that's what kind of makes the crew. And then it's reset time, and reset, go back up, and back to work. So
Nice.
it works. It really does. You can have a great. It's a great crew rapport when you're doing stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a reset minute here. So, we call this a human forestry podcast, and we always like to get into sort of some tree stuff, and we don't always know where it's going to go. And we've had some great lessons here on bucket truck operation, which is awesome because we haven't had much aerial lift stuff as of yet. But let's shift gears a little bit and go down the human forestry road because trees, typically people that work in the trees we find and it's been part of their career and part of their lives. They can have more of an impact on more than just tree work. So can you talk a little bit about or think about how has being part of the tree how is being part of trees, not necessarily just working in trees, but just being a tree guy, how has that impacted your personal life and your family and yourself as a human? Can you talk a little bit about that or make a correlation there?
It's been an odd journey because God. Um, if you don't run a chainsaw, you cannot discuss it with people who do not run chainsaws. They literally, well, I'll get okay. You go after a poplar, and you're going to go up into a poplar, and you're going to remove a 26,000 pound poplar. You're going to reduce it down to 6 inches off the ground. That's a hell of a job, and
Yeah.
you're going to try to explain that to somebody who has never fired up a chainsaw before. There's an entire it's I hate to use this analogy, but it's almost like explaining heart surgery in a way. People just have no reference point for it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So right away you're fighting to be understood in an operation, in a business that is so incredibly dangerous. That's one part of it, but it's basically for the working man, for the regular guy out there. He's just, I don't understand why the job can't be done, and there's lots of reasons why the job can't be done, but explaining it to people is very difficult. So that's been a difficult path for me, because I've always been very straightforward guy. So for forestry here at work, the world of being an arborist is very rewarding as an educator, but trying to get it through City Hall and to have it truly understood has been a journey for sure. Frustrating, um, for sure. Very rewarding. It certainly can be very rewarding, but the reward comes from actually doing the job. The frustrating part is trying to get support to do the job. So that's where the tough part of it has been that. But man,
So you're saying
but going
you're
home
saying
smelling
it's
like two stroke every day is, I love it.
interesting. So you're saying like you've experienced, let me see if I got this right. You experienced like challenges in the fact that you have to work with people as part of your work environment. Now, I think you're talking about work mostly here, or even potentially someone that maybe you're trying to convince them why it costs so much to take a tree down or why it takes so long.
Mm.
Because, or, you're basically trying to communicate this to someone that has no recollection and that's caused you, like, how is that affect, I can understand, I hear you saying it's caused you, angst or frustration. I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, but,
Yeah.
if you think about that, what have you learned in that? Like, most challenges are things that challenge us, teach us something. So what have you learned from that experience? Like in trying to communicate these things and the frustration that's been created.
Well, the great reward about it is that it's taught me to talk to people differently. So you can't just pound them over the head with education. You need to present it
Huh.
to them, and it's something I learned in the Army, is that these guys can no longer be yelled at or sworn at or kicked or anything to do what they need to do. They have to be mentored. And I have
Hmm.
found at on this job now that for the folks that don't know forestry, they don't know arboriculture, they need to be mentored, and not for lack of a better word, not mansplained. You know, this is why we need to do the job. It would be a good idea to do it this way, um, and safety demands we do it this way, and that sort of thing. Just come at it from a different perspective. They don't know, and that's okay. They actually I used to think that they must know. I must educate, and now
Hmm.
it's a matter of, here's the job that we're facing. This is why it's got to be done this way, and then work with them to because they have an opinion. Everybody's got some kind of an idea, some kind
Right.
of something valued to add to it. And I could be guilty of not listening to that in the past, and I do now, and it's a much better way to do
Hmm.
things.
Interesting. Andrew, now, and I do want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned it now a couple of times, but your experience with the military and in the Canadian Army. So, and I guess that's something you and Tony have in common, not the Canadian Army, but the Army. Because I don't know if you know Chris, but Tony is a U.S. Army veteran.
Attaboy, Tony.
Um, how had and you just did you've had a couple stints in the Army, is that right, Chris?
Yeah, I've been through it. This will be time number 3. I'm a sucker.
Okay, so you're going back again?
Oh no, I'm still in right now. But I've
Oh,
just
okay,
been in and out and in out and back in again. So this is time 3. So I went back to basic when I was 50. So just
right.
you can't knock the Army out of the boy.
Yeah, and there was a time in when you returned, and it's reservist. You were correct,
Yeah, I'm
or
a
were you
reservist.
regular
Yeah,
Army as well? Were you
I
regular Army
was
as well, or?
I was regular Army for years to begin with, and then switched over to the reserve side.
And you were at one time the oldest reservist in or even the oldest
Yeah,
infantryman, or?
when I went to basic, I was the oldest. I was the oldest man to ever take basic training in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Excuse me. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that. It was pretty cool.
yeah.
Pretty cool. Now, I have to ask, being in the trees your whole life and having this connection to the Army, how, if any way, did trees uh, work with your experience in the Army? Like, was there a connection? Did you utilize it? Did it serve you in any way?
Oh yeah, quick decision making for sure. And then because in the Canadian Army they value so much the individual and the decisions that you make and the plan that you make. And of course, taking trees down is it's all about the plan. And the Army is the exact same way. And quick decision making, the two lend into each other perfectly. And added to that is being an older guy because I work with young guys in both domains, trees and the Army. It taught me to be much better around those guys, much better leader around them. So the leadership aspect of it has been fantastic.
Huh. Interesting. Interesting. And
Yeah, yeah.
chainsaws in
And
the Army, did you get a chance to do that, or did they
I
use them?
did. Yeah, I did. I did. I'm telling you, every job I ever have has got to have chainsaws in it. And once they found out I was a chainsaw instructor, I ended up nothing as sweet as what you did, but I did give a saw course to the
Oh
engineers
yeah.
up here. Yeah.
Really? Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those jobs, we joke about all the time as arborists, but you know, doctors get it, chiropractors, massage therapists, probably dentists even, it's one of those practitioner jobs. Well, electricians, plumbers, drywallers, painters, cabinet makers, arborists. It's like any of these trade type skills where you've got to, hey, I got this hitch in my back. I've got this cupboard. I got this door hinge. I got this tree. you know, once people know that you do the work, right?
yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah. Cool. Would you come? I don't know how many people would say, "Hey, could you come and look at my tree?" Yeah, I guess I could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or can you take a
I
tree
to-
out and we'll have a barbecue and I'll feed you a burger. It's
exactly. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much of that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Tony, did you? I don't know if we've ever talked about it as far as your experience or using the saw in the U.S. Army. I imagine you must have. I don't know if you did. Oh, Tony, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, I had the wrong button. I had to mute
I
myself. I'm
can't.
coughing and
Oh,
wheezing
sorry.
from a head cold here. So, no, we very briefly was
Yeah,
combat
yeah, it's all good.
engineer. We didn't have anything gas powered because of all the explosives we handled around, but we did have some pneumatic powered chainsaws, and we once had to go. We once had to go into the Black Forest of Germany. They had some pretty straight line winds, some lot of damage. So we were basically helping the German Forest Service clear out roads and stuff. And it was a total shit show. We're using 5 tons for skidders and doll ass pneumatic chainsaws. And eventually it got to the point where we just said, to hell with this. And we just got a bunch of explosives and
Yeah.
blew this shit out of it. That was way more fun. way more up our way more in our skill
Yeah.
set then. So yeah, but
Nice.
that was about the extent of it.
So you actually, I didn't know that I didn't know you blew up trees, Tony.
Oh yeah, there's a French word for it. Maybe Chris know when you lay trees down for a tank blockade over a road, they crisscross. There's a name for it.
Abatis.
Something like, yeah, Battis. We used to you'd use two charges.
That's called an abatis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd use two charges. So one was
Yeah.
basically your face cut and the other one was up top called a kicker charge. You would push it over. And we got quite good at it. We did get pretty good at it. I would say our felling accuracy was 60% half of the time. Yep.
Is that a common phrase in the military here in Canada too, Chris?
No,
60% half of the time.
It's funny because the Canadian Army and the American Army is so different. Like I taught my guys. They went to Vermeer and got throw line, and I taught them to get a line in the tree so that they could drop it because it's all chainsaw, it's all face cut, back cut. So there was no explosives involved. But our engineers, they would have blown them up if they could. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Chris, how about personally, just taking it away from the army or the arborist world? How do you feel trees have impacted just Chris McGuire and his your personal life? How has it affected you or benefited you or been part of you?
Trees, I love them because there's no answers to them. I've taken quite a few courses. I've taken some courses through you and listened and read what Shigo has to say. And what I've come up with is that nobody actually knows. I'm faith. There's a lot of good thinking out there, but what I'm seeing is that there just doesn't seem to be rhyme or reason to trees. They are, I think, far more. I think they're far more profound than we think they are in their environment. Just the rules that I've been taught just don't seem to apply. I've seen trees get sick to the point where I'm ready to take them out only for them to come back. I've seen cankers giant cankers in trees that don't affect them at all. I've seen them bounce back from years and years of heavy pest population. They just fascinate me. They like I said, there just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to trees. They're out there doing it because I think they have to do it because we're such a mess. I don't know. They please me. They please me on a in my lizard brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and how does that manifest or carry forward in who you are as a human with your interaction with your loved ones, with your surroundings, with the human forest that you walk around in every day? How does Chris's tree and his roots connect with all those around him? And how has the trees been a part of that for you?
Well, it's made me. It's opened my eyes to everything. It's opened my eyes to my family. I need to. I'll say this, and people don't quite understand what I mean, but the tree, but also the felling plan of the tree, taking the tree down, is something that cycles through my entire life. The process of things. So I see that tree standing there, and I realize that I have got to take it to ground. I appreciate the fact that it's standing there, and I wonder all the time what has happened to it. And so I look at people the exact same way. I think that in a way we're all trees, we're all rooted, we all have our issues on the inside and on the outside that we're working on. And the process of looking at people, from learning what the process of trees are and how to fix them, either through pruning or not necessarily through removal, but that process is something that that I see and that I'm trying to be cognizant of all the time. I think the whole world is roots. The whole world,
Exactly.
all the trees and all the people have got roots in there somewhere. Some of those roots are pretty compromised, and some of them are very, very strong. And is my like I'll reference my daughter. Her little roots are just giving her, and they're
Yeah.
growing in all sorts of ways. And where they bash up against a foundation, or they're not getting watered properly, or
Yeah.
uh, those things need to be cultivated and cultured and that sort of thing. So I recognize that I'm doing the best I can. I'm just human. I've got my own pests in my own trunk.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
like the forest, you have you're a father your trees is a mother tree, and you've got the young trees or the saplings, growing up around you, and like trees, there's connections made through to how are your roots helping your daughter? Do you think your roots out there?
I think I hold a I think I hold a standard that both my daughters adhere to, and I think that they appreciate it. I think that these are tough times for everybody, and I think that and I'm pretty solid, and so is mom. Um, and so they look at that and they say, if they're looking at the tree that is the family, they're seeing that there's a very strong foundation there. So there can
Hmm.
be trouble, and there can be anxiety, and there could be that sort of thing. But when they look back, when they're looking to get their head up and chest out and feet on the ground, they're looking at mom and dad and they're saying, well, they're doing it, and I can too. So I think that's profound, and I got that from my parents.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was one of the impetuses, I suppose you could say, for the podcast, and the reason when I first thought of or heard this term, it was really one of the guys at one of our team events. We were standing around the circle like we do, with the shoulder to shoulder, arms over each other's shoulders, and we were kind of having a closing out, little chat. And one of the guys said, it was Emmy. He said, "I'm just really proud. I'm a sapling in this forest of giant trees, and I'm happy to be growing up in it." And I was like, "Yeah, it's a human forest." And I've been running with that theme, and it was really what kind of started the podcast idea, and why
yeah,
I always want to bring it around in that is and people talked about it, how even trees are like people. We have wounds, we have scars, we may not heal them either. We seal them over with stronger, better wood, like wound wood, that to reestablish the strength of the trunk before it was injured, and we go through hardships, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes we have included bark, and sometimes we have to subordinate an errant lead to get things back in alignment. And, maybe there's some disease that needs to be pruned and so on. I mean, I don't know how long the analogy lasts as far as when it comes to removal, but it certainly does come. We feel to when trees fail or fall
mhm,
in the forest. They don't just go away. We don't just chip them up like in the natural forest, those big trees eventually decompose and are giving back even in the end, and we have those that have fallen in our forest that are still giving back to us, like your father, you know,
yeah,
his tree, his trunk is still feeding your family and still
yeah,
feeding your human forest.
yeah. Very much so. Very much so. That's a very apt
Yeah.
description for sure. Yeah, I mean we have everything. We still have a healthy section of the forest if we're talking about people that are that are helping the rest of it along, right? And
Hmm.
it's all intertwined, and it all needs care and attention.
Yeah. 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 It's an interesting concept. And, part of me wonders if what the example that the trees are, and the trees in the forest is to humanity, as far as how, uh, the possibility of how we can cohabit and exist and the cycle of life can go, with them discovering relatively recently the trees, you know, not only trees of the same species being interconnected to the roots, but even trees of different species being connected and them sharing, energy that way through the root system and being connected, not just tree to tree, but trees to fungus. And, that everything's interwoven, it's a fascinating topic. And, we like to kind of wrap up with that and, ask people's thoughts on how, with that whole concept in mind, how the trees, because most everyone we talk to it's our connection comes from trees in the first place, either through training or through working. And, how being an arborist and then, also being a trainer, cause you're not just an arborist, you're part of the training world as well. Like, how is that all, if you could just sum it up, how is that, how is your forest rounded out and how does it change or affect how Chris functions in this human force? I'll ask what, I think I already asked it, but I'm asking it again, I
Well,
guess.
no, I have an answer for that. It goes back to how did earlier when you were asking about how do you communicate forestry and arboriculture and that sort of thing to folks who don't know about it. I used to
Yeah.
think that through work ethic that I could educate everybody, that everybody would see how hard Chris McGuire works, and I want to work like him, and I want to work smart like him, and I was trying to affect people on a large scale. And what I've learned is that it's the singular. It comes down to the tree, to doing the assessment on the tree, and that it's easier, and I think it's more profound to work in smaller groups on people on the singular. And I've had great success as an instructor with my groups, with my students. I've really profound engagements with them in these 8-person groups, in these 6-person groups. And I'll give you an example of that. When I went back up to Whitehorse to train the Northwest Utilities guys last year, I watched them doing my techniques as they were cutting down trees, patented Chris McGuire techniques. And I stopped them and I said, "Why are you doing that?" And they said, "Because you did it. And because you're so good. Well, you're so good at it. And you taught us so well. And we had so much fun with you and that sort of thing." There's an impact I made. And they were enjoying it. And they enjoyed the chainsaw. And they enjoyed the course. And they enjoyed us. So I realized that there's an impact to be made. And it's about that smaller group and influencing that in the way that you can. And they go forward. And then they do it. Right. And I think that's extremely important. As long as you're doing your best.
Right. Their roots move forward and connect with other roots, and
Yeah.
you can, it's like that ripple effect that we talk about at Trainer, except kind of taking it underground.
Yeah, but you talk about roots and then you talk about the people that get to your class and say, "I've always wanted to take this class. I've heard nothing but good things." Well, there's your roots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's your roots getting
Yeah.
out there. So, yeah, it's been rewarding. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is perspective, when you can choose a different perspective. You can think of things as there's that whole half empty, half full. How's your day been? Has it been pretty good or has it been not bad? How do you frame things? And that whole positive, looking for the positive things helps a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
Yes.
wonder, I wonder if trees, I can't help but think that they must, they're not able to run away from their problems. They're not able to run to, the areas they want. I mean, their roots will bust into a sewer line because they know there's good stuff there or near and around it because it's leaking or whatever. But they're always going to where it's favorable and going to where it's good. And even though they can't move there, they make the best of what they got where they are all the time. They do their best.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
They find their advantages where they can.
Another example.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, it's just over an hour we've been chatting, and really appreciated our conversation. I really like the fact that we got into talking about some aerial lift stuff. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot for that. I think a lot of people, not. The fact is, I don't think most of the, as much as there is a lot of climbers, it's still a smaller percentage of the guys doing actual aerial tree work. I think the bucket operators outnumber the climbers by a considerable amount, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, oh yeah, but not nearly as covered in training and that sort of thing. So, and that's we just need to we just need to be better, right, in everything, and that's part of it.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that side to it, and I'm sure we'll maybe get some more people on that got some more of the bucket background. But even yourself, interestingly enough, your first exposure to the tree work side of things, as far as in the air goes, was on rope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Good times.
I just want to say this is Dwayne Newstater with Chris McGuire and Tony Tressel. And we hope that you all enjoyed another edition of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast.
Thanks, Chris. It was nice talking with you. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Now I got to get back to work.